Hello, great day, everyone. It is great to see you all out there. I know you're not here yet, but you'll be popping in here at any moment. So, we have to have a conversation because the world is changing and the workplace is changing. No one wants to work anymore. The workforce is becoming lazy, and everyone just wants to milk the company for hours while they're not doing their jobs. That's what everyone is saying. But is this true? Is this a true reflection of what's happening in the anti work trends sweeping the globe? We have the great resignation, we have quiet quitting, we even have quiet firing. So, what we want to do today is we want to talk a little bit more about these trends. What's really happening out there as we get ready to lead above the grind? Let's get started. All right, great day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Coffee with Rhonda Show. This is your cup full of inspiration, revelation, and wit for today's savvy leader. This is season 7, and this is episode 84. So, we are excited to be here with you today. I'm coming to you live from Cartagena, Colombia. So, fair warning. You might hear some strange sounds. There's been birds chirping, and they're actually pretty loud. Sounds like I'm in the middle of a jungle, but that's okay. So if you hear any strange noises, people walking in the background, then you know to take it all in stride. So before we get started and introduce our co-host and our guests, we want to ask you to take a moment to share this video right now. Pause, take a moment, share this video. I guarantee you there is someone out there who will want to hear a part of this message. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We want you to be a member of the Coffee with Rhonda Show family. Now, with all of that being said, my name is Rhonda Y. Williams, and I'm your host for the show. I'm known as an R soul, or a recovering stressed out leader. I believe today we must modernize our view of leadership to include well-being, ongoing growth, and effectiveness. I'm the founder of Leadership Above the Grind Mentoring and Coaching Academy, and where we help leaders really learn to be more effective and include that well-being piece. Today in my cup, I just have a regular old cup. This is I'm at a hotel here in Cartagena, so I just have delicious Colombian coffee in my cup. So that's me, and that's where I am. So let's say hello to our co-host. Hello, good evening to you, Mireille.
Hello, good. I don't know why. Good morning on your side, and good morning, Brandy. And hello to everyone. Welcome to the Coffee with Rhonda. This is Mireille, all the way from Perth, Australia. And I'm always so delighted to finish my Saturday with you. So I'm called the greatness engineer because I'm all about greatness. I help you to understand that you have this greatness and help you to unleash it. And that's really where I bring value. I'm the managing director and CEO of Mireille Toulekima Global Leadership Organization, and also the managing director of MT Energy Resources, where I am an engineer, a real engineer, if you want to, for people who are asking themselves what it is. So that's for today. I'm going to drink green tea with a little bit of chlorophyll to give me
Oh,
a little bit of boost. So Welcome, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Mireille. Thank you for being here. And I want to welcome to the Coffee with Rhonda show coffee table, Brandy Ferrer. Brandy, I am so excited to welcome you to the coffee table. Tell us a little bit about you and the work you do in the world, and then tell us what you have in your cup.
Fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm super excited for our conversation today. I'm the president and CEO of Pathfinder Strategies. We are a leadership and performance consultancy company. So we help our clients keep their best people and keep them performing at their best.
Mm.
Doing that for about 10 years. It's fantastic work. I love it. It's always interesting. Get to meet great people. And I live in Spokane, Washington. So not nearly as beautiful, Rhonda, as where you are, or Murray, as interesting as Australia, but it is lovely. It's a little cloudy and rainy outside today, but that's how it is in the fall. So today in my cup, I've got my, let's see if I can get it. Oh, it's all blurry. There it
Oh,
is.
there we go.
There it is. So got my Powell's cup from my favorite bookstore, and I just have my straight up coffee.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brandy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And we've got a couple of folks out there. Regina's out there. Hey, sis, good morning to you. She's in Austin, Texas, feeling amazing, and she has coffee in her cup. She's ready to learn. Let's go. And then we have mom out there. Mom has strawberry watermelon cocktail in her cup today. Honestly, Brandy, my mom always has the most interesting things in her cup. So
I like her style.
I know, right? And she loves variety. So good morning to you, Mom. And Dr. Hamdi is out there. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. It's great to see you. And he has honest in his cup. Good vibes. Thank you so much. It's great to see you out here. And I want everyone to begin thinking about what you know about anti work trends and ask yourself, are they starting to impact your organization? Are you seeing extended staffing openings where you're not able to fill positions? Are you seeing more resignations? So, we are going to dive into our conversation today by talking a little bit. Let's start by talking about quiet quitting. And I want to specifically begin talking about this one because I think there's a lot of misconceptions and
You're the co-host.
additional co-host. He's filling in for Roz. So there you go. Um, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings out there around quiet quitting and what it is and why it's happening. So, for those of you out there, if you're seeing quiet quitting start to impact your organizations, feel free to drop a comment in and we'll bring that into our conversation. Brandy, I want to start with you. Talk to us a little bit about like, how do you see quiet quitting? What is it?
Yeah, I see quiet quitting as sort of a reprioritization of how people view work. So, I think about myself back in 2007, 2008, when the economy was crashing, and I was laid off twice in like 5 years, or less than 5 years, twice in 3 years. And my philosophy was, I just need to have a job. And so when I got a job, I was very happy to have that job. And I was happy to go above and beyond. I was just happy to be employed because there wasn't a lot of opportunity out there. Well, that has changed. So as an example, in the state of Washington, where I am, there's 9 open positions for every 2 job applicants. So the philosophy has changed, right? It's not like, oh my gosh, I'll be lucky if I have a job. The philosophy is like, okay, well, if this doesn't work, I have lots of other options out there. I also think that sort of coming out of the pandemic, we saw a lot of rebalancing, people really putting their personal lives first and taking that approach and putting some more boundaries around their working lives, trying to find that balance. So I think we're seeing that as well.
Yeah, I do think that's something that we're seeing. And Mireille, do you see quiet quitting the same way? And is it impacting Australia and other. Dr. Hamdi, I would love to know if you're seeing signs of quiet quitting as well, in your country and in the work that you're doing in your hospital. Are we really seeing quiet quitting all over, or is it a global phenomena, or is it just happening here in the States? Mireille, talk to us about that.
I think the Australian market is a bit different because I mean it's the economy is always quite balanced, and we always end up having less qualified people than the people who are here. So there's always opportunity to move from one hand to another. But what I see is that. Like what Brandy was saying, is about people balancing their life. So the family and their professional life, and what actually make them happy in terms of balance. So you see a lot of people changing jobs because they're looking for this balance, especially women. Do you want to have the flexibility and be able to participate in your children activities, or just have a more balanced life? So I think it's more, the debate is more at trying to find the right balance, more than the opportunity that are not available. And that's what we see right now.
I want to talk a little bit about that balance. So Doug is out there. Hi, Doug. Great to see you. Gosh,
Mhm.
Doug was on the show. I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 seasons ago. So it's great to see you, Doug. And then we have Munir is out there. He says, "My country is Bangladesh." So thank you so much. We tend to have a very global audience. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for that. And he says, "I love you." Well, we love you right back. That is very kind. Thank you so much for that. And Nima is out there as well. Peace and blessings to all. Drinking green tea with honey. Sounds delicious, Nima. Thanks so much for joining. So, we want to hear all of your thoughts about quiet quitting, the great resignation, as well. So, talk to us a little bit. If you feel free to drop a note in the comment. Marae, something that you were just saying, and Brandy, you described it as a bit of reprioritization of
Mhm.
life, right? And setting boundaries. But the way that it is getting described in the media is this awful thing, like people are just slouching on the job, right? Like people are
Mhm.
just not doing their jobs. That's not what quiet quitting is. I need every employer and leader out there to understand what quiet quitting is. Quiet quitting says, I will no longer do the work of two people and you're paying me for one.
Mhm.
That's what quiet quitting is. It means I will show up, I will do my
Mhm.
40 hours, and I will do it well. The
Yeah.
people who are not doing their jobs well, those are not quiet quitties. Those are different performance management
Mhm.
discussions that you need to have. So Dr. Hamdi actually responded, and he says, for expats in Saudi Arabia, things are getting difficult as the Saudiization of a lot of jobs is going very fast. Dr. Hamdi, that is a really great point. So Saudi Arabia has a lot of expats in it. And what they're doing right now is really there's a movement towards, like he said, the Saudiization of everything. So they want things to be for the Saudi people, for Saudi citizens and that sort of thing, which is kind of squeezing other people who are there living there, trying to figure out how to survive. So that's a really, really great point. Um, so employers, why should I, Brandy? Why should you pay me for 40 hours? And in the States, we have this really bad. We put
Yeah.
everyone on salary.
Yeah.
Everyone's on salary. So you get this much. So I don't have to pay you overtime, right? Like I do an individual contributor. So you're on a salary, even if you're not managing people, right? Which is originally what salary was intended for. I'm going to pay you this flat rate, but I expect you to work your butt off. And I expect you to work 50, 60 hours. And I expect you to do whatever it takes to get the job done. What's the problem with that, Brandy?
Well, there's many problems with that, right? There's burnout, right? That's a
Mhm.
huge thing that we're seeing. It's not realistic, right? It's not realistic for any sustained amount of time to have a high degree of performance. And I think one of the issues is that that's not the expectations that are being set up front,
Right.
I don't know of anyone who's hired into a position and the hiring manager says, guess what? We're going to pay you for this, but we're really going to work you to the bone. That's not a conversation that happens. Now, of course, there's extenuating circumstances where, hey, we can't fill this position. We need you to kind of step up and take on an additional role for a little while. But the problem with that too is there's, again, not those expectations in place. So there's not like, hey, I'm going to ask you to take on this additional amount of work for the next month until we get someone in, or we're having trouble staffing, so we're going to push back our deadlines, or we're going to reprioritize some of our projects. That's not happening. A lot of leaders are like, okay, we're pre-pandemic, here we come. Like, we need to be working in the same way, at the same pace, with different resources. And it's not a reasonable expectation.
So I love that. It's not a reasonable expectation. And Doug has a really great point. Doug said, why should employees put out 100% plus effort for a company that sees and treats them as unimportant and a part of management problems? I agree, Doug. I think it's, unfortunately, we have many organizations that are unaware, right? They're not aware of their own behaviors and how it affects everyone. So I think that organizations are being given a wake-up call, which is, I think, what's happening with these anti-work trends. So, Mireille, I think these anti-work trends, even though they're not new, right? You always had employees who reset boundaries and decided, you know what, I am not for the hustle culture anymore. But what's happening is it's being given a name. It's being given very odd. It's being given a fancy name and a label that everyone can tap into, and now they have something to feed on. When reality, organizations, this is your wake-up call. This is people speaking loudly to you saying, we don't like it. We don't have to do it anymore because this is not the 1940s. And you know what? We're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's important. And I always talk about rule of engagement. Those rules of engagement they have to be dynamic, because you have to review them each time there is a change. You can't just keep having the same rules for a different situation. And that's what I think I see organizations are struggling to do, is that, you know, they have some rules, they have some policies, they have their own culture, and they don't want to change it. And yet we are in a world which is changing all the time. Change is really the constant here, and everything has to be reviewed. The communication, and that's what we're talking about. Inclusion is not just about gender, race, or anything. It's inclusion of, you know, your employee, you know, way of life, and are they happy, and do they feel really happy about, you know, what they're doing. So inclusion is part of it. And I think sometimes we're missing this link. We just focus on, you know, the race, the gender, but inclusion it's also, what do you do with, you know, people who are completely stressed out, who are actually nearing burnout? How do you solve this problem to make sure that, you know, they're happy, they can give their best? Because that's also the problem, is that when you stretch people like that, it's difficult for them to give them their best. Right. So it's actually not at your advantage as an employer.
Yeah.
And isn't that something? Oh, go ahead, Brandy.
Thanks. So one thing I'll just add to that, the inclusion piece and the value piece, right? So these trends are not necessarily new. What's different is, yes, there's a name, and yes, there's just more options out there, right? There's more employers that are looking for positions to be filled. But I think the other piece that's really important is people feeling valued in their work. So if you're in a role and, you know, you're really busy and you're making up for the fact that, you know, you used to be a 10-person team and now you're a 7-person team. If you're getting that value and that appreciation and that recognition from your manager, from your leader, that is a very different experience from, we're not going to backfill these positions and just deal with it. Now you have 3 hats to wear instead of 1. And that is such an important part of the conversation. It's always been there, but I think now it's even more important.
I do think I do think organizations are so used to, I'm just going to say it. I think they're so used to taking advantage of people
Mhm.
unfairly
Yeah.
that now that the tables are turning a bit, they don't like it, right? Employees
Yes.
are feeling like, no, this is not right. In what world do you expect people to give 150% all the time and you're going to pay them for 100%?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't understand why that's a whole thing, but it was. And we understood the
Mm-hmm.
hustle culture. So maybe one of the things employers can do is begin to have in their own organizations and the way that they think categories of employees.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So high performers and those who are looking to climb the corporate ladder
Mhm.
might be one group.
Yeah.
That's going to be the group that buys into the hustle culture.
Yeah.
That's going to be the group that wants to go above and beyond because they want that leadership role, right? They want those things, but that's their choice.
Right.
There should be another group of people that I do what you pay me for, and
Yeah.
that should be okay.
Yeah.
Why is that not okay for me to come in? I'm doing good work. I get good evaluations. My work is at a very high quality and a very high standard.
Mhm.
That should be okay. And that's a second group of people. And then you've got a third group of people who are not meeting standard and expectation
Yeah.
in terms of their delivery of work product. And then that's the group, of course, that you want to be coaching, etc. Everyone is not going to be here, and
Yes.
that should be okay,
Yeah.
right? And so, and when if organizations can begin to reframe how they think about their people, so that they say, no, Rhonda's a really good employee. She does her work. She comes in. She's
Yeah.
not interested in climbing the corporate ladder. And you know what? That's okay for us. Here's the other thing, and I want to get you both to respond and react to this. Back in the day, it was we also engaged in that hustle culture because we wanted to be at this organization for 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? We wanted to be there for 30 years. Murray, that's not
Mm-hmm.
the case anymore. In fact, today they will tell you if you're at an organization for more than 3 to 5 years, you're probably there too long because mixing it up a bit helps you
Mm-hmm.
grow, learn, and see different things. Murray,
Mm-hmm.
what if I don't want to be there for 30 years?
Yeah, I mean, no way. I mean, I've not done it myself. So, and I got criticized by it because I've changed jobs so many times, and back then it was not really something that you could see. People were actually labeling me unstable. But the thing is, now, like I said, things are changing. It's the digital. We have so many options. Digital. We can do so many things. So you can't expect to stay, in a job 30 years. And some of the job actually that we're going to have in 5 years, and they don't even exist yet.
Right.
So this flexibility needs to be, integrated for, I think, for us as, for entrepreneurs or employee, but also to, the all the big especially the sizable organization where I used to have people who stay there for I don't know how many years, and really take it for granted, because I think that's what's happening. They take for granted that whoever they have will stay for at least 10, 15 years, and they can, give them what workload that they think is necessary to grow the company and to make the money that they want to make. So I think it is definitely changing, this volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity in a way, because we see cycles. I mean, we had the pandemic, which nobody was, expecting. So,
Mhm.
and it's changing the way we are doing business and the way organizations are related to the employee. And there's going to be another change at some time. So we really have to get used to, redefining ourselves, either as an employee or as an employer, and understand that that's going to be the constant.
Yep. Change is going to be the constant. So,
Mhm.
Dr. Hamdi said in the book From Good to Great, one of the most important quotes I learned: for organizations to go from good to great, there must be a consistency of actions aligned with the founder's vision.
Mhm.
And today, I would add, Dr. Hamdi, that vision and there has to be some flexibility within that because the
Mhm.
workplace is changing so rapidly.
Mhm.
And you see this tension
Yeah.
between organizations that are trying to stay the same
Yeah.
because they're comfortable. they're comfortable with the same versus employees who are looking at the world around us saying, we can do this differently.
Yeah.
I can show up differently. I want to be different in this. Brandy, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to share a story that I heard recently from a client, and I think it's really powerful, and I think it speaks to exactly what we're talking about. So this organization, it was a smaller nonprofit, and as the pandemic was sort of winding down, I don't know if it's safe to say that, but as the conversation was coming up about, are we going to come back to the office? Are we going to continue to work from home? Are we going to be hybrid? The CEO was dead set on, oh yeah, we're coming back to the office. And because that's part of how she had been successful, it's part of how the company had been successful, was this working together and collaborating. So her leadership team said to her, you know what? We don't agree. We don't agree with this. We have a business case that we want to present to you. We've done a risk analysis, and we want to present sort of a counterpoint of why we should be able to do hybrid work instead. And come to find out, it was actually less risk and it was more of a cost savings for them to engage in a hybrid model. But my point that I want to make here is that leader was flexible. And she was willing to listen. And she was willing to say, okay, maybe what worked before isn't going to work now. What got us here may not get us there. And that's a really powerful thing, to be able to listen to your people.
I think that's so right. And I love that last piece. What got us here won't get us there. So we talk about that in terms of leaders and their growth and hitting that ceiling, right? What got you here won't get you there. And the fact that you've got to do something different to hit that next level. It's the same with organizations, right? You've got to be willing to adjust and change. And just because you did it in the past doesn't mean it's the only way. And it doesn't mean it's the best way. Yeah. So Brandy, as I was getting ready for today's show, I was sort of looking at the work that you're doing and reading your profile, and I came across this quote that I'm going to share. And then I want you to just tell us a little bit more about your thinking around this quote. So business results cannot be achieved in dysfunctional cultures. I love this quote because when I'm thinking about quiet quitting and the great resignation, I'm thinking this: if your culture is rock solid, if your culture is strong, if your culture is healthy and robust, your people are not quiet quitting. Your people are not engaging in the great resignation. So please, we've got to get beyond this. Well, it's just a pandemic and people are lazy and don't want to work. No. So Brandy, talk to us about what your thinking was when you came up with that quote.
Yeah. So let me just give you like a super easy, accessible example. Have any of you worked for maybe a boss at some point or a coworker, and you just felt like, I have to walk on eggshells around this person?
Yep.
Okay. And that is a very uncomfortable feeling. It doesn't feel safe. And then when you come to work, all your energy is spent trying to figure out, how do I navigate my conversation with this person? Is it a good day to talk to this person? That is one teeny tiny example of a dysfunctional culture. So you times that by, 10 people or however large the organization is. And what happens is we're so focused on self-preservation that we don't want to go above and beyond. We don't want to stick our heads up. We don't want to get noticed. We just want to get by. So it's very hard to be creative in those kinds of environments. It's very hard to get beyond the status quo. And quite frankly, nobody wants to work in an environment where it doesn't feel safe or it doesn't feel comfortable. So that's just one example. But yeah, anytime that we're focused on the work that doesn't matter, CYA communication or the walking on eggshells or whatever, anytime that's our focus, that means we're not focusing on the work that matters. So how can we be productive? How can we be successful if we're not even focused on the work?
I love that. So Mireille, the challenge I have with the challenge I often see in the work that I do with organizations and leaders around the globe is that those that are dysfunctional have no idea that they're dysfunctional.
Exactly. And I will give you an example. When I was still working in Malaysia, our leader back then didn't realize how dysfunctional the team was, and in 1 week, 5 people resigned, and he just sat down and asked, "What's going on with my team?" He didn't see it coming. The thing, I mean, it was dysfunctional. He didn't actually address it, and people were just quitting one day after another, and I was one of them. So it is important, like Brandy said, that leader listen and see, communicate with their team to really understand where they are, what they want to do, and how they can actually use their skills to bring the best, to the team, instead of just giving a process and saying, okay, that's what's gonna work for everyone, and not listen to any advice coming from the team. And that's very dangerous, and I think that's what's happening right now. A lot of leaders are not listening, and being a leader, listening is one of the key aspect of leadership. So we have to learn again as leader to listen and communicate with the people that we lead.
I love that because it's so easy as a leader to be dismissive. And the
Mhm,
reason
mhm.
that you're dismissive is because you're defensive, right?
Exactly.
And so just listening to what people are saying to you and not taking it personally, but when people are saying, this doesn't feel good to me, it doesn't feel right, it feels really hard to do my work, I can't show up at my best for you, you're expecting me to do things that I don't want to do, and I don't feel like I can fulfill. All of those things are signals. And I feel like these anti work trends are an amazing opportunity for smart organizations to take that feedback and really decide, okay, how do I fix this, right? And Dr. Hamdi says, culture eats strategy for breakfast all day long, Dr. Hamdi. That is so true because, yes, we come up with these great, wonderful strategies and all of that, but at the same time, what's the culture of the organization? Because it will drive. This is where I go to leadership coaching, development, and training. So, as leaders, we come up with this great strategy, but you don't coach your leaders on how to communicate. You don't coach your leaders to how to care for people. You don't
Mhm,
coach your leaders on how to accept feedback that might be difficult to hear. Because when you have, I'll just put it out there, when you have high performers, they're going to challenge you because that's what high performers do. They don't just accept that what you say is true. They want to push the boundaries, and why can't we, and why should we, and why do we, and all of those things. So Doug says, excuse me, did you say something? Yes, Doug, we're saying a lot. The great resignation, quiet quitting, those are all things that people are saying to organizations. And so
mhm,
I want us as companies and leaders to be able to listen and then to do something with that information. So I want to start talking about things that organizations can do. And Doug and Dr. Hamdi and Nima as well, Regina, if you're out, what can organizations do? What can they begin to do to create so that their environment sort of is resistant to these anti-work trends? How do you create a resistant environment? But first, so begin thinking about that. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and do our top two, because I'm here in this just lovely place and I've been thinking about vacations and all of that. So I've got one day, for those of you that might have missed it earlier, I'm on location in Cartagena, Colombia. And after today's show, I get the rest of the day to sit by the pool or the beach or whatever and just sort of relax. So I've been here at a conference all week, and I'm looking forward to relaxing. So I thought today our top two would be around, what are your top two favorite things to do when you're on vacation? So some people like an, yeah,
somebody has an opinion.
I know what I like to do. I like to eat the food that people leave around. Um, so when you're on vacation, what are your top two favorite things to do? So if you're out there, type in the comments. When you go on vacation, what are your top two favorite things to do. So we're going to start, and we're going to start with Mireille and Brandy getting their top two when we come back right after this. All right. So when you're on vacation, what are your top two things to do? So, Mireille, let's start with you. What do you do on vacation?
So on vacation, I like to go in area where I can meet people that that have a different culture than mine. That's why I like to travel in different countries to learn and really be free. Not no time constraints. So that's for me. That's the vacation. The second one is just do nothing. I do so much, during the during the normal time that for me it's just being lazy, going swimming when I want, eat what I want, and that's it. So two things: meet new people and connect, but also be lazy. Definitely.
Oh, I love it. It sounds fun to me. Brandy, what are your top two things to do on vacation?
Yeah, so I'm gonna steal some of what Mireille said about being lazy. I want to sleep in and not be on too much of a crazy schedule. I want to get some of that relaxing in, but I also like to check out kind of like the local historical things, the things that make a place unique or different.
Mhm.
That's very fun. I have started going on tours,
Mhm.
and I never used to do that before because I don't like too much structure, like
Mhm.
you're saying, right? I don't like a lot of structure. But recently, the past couple of trips, I did tours, and they've been really, really fun because not only do you get into the culture of the area, but you've got this guide that's explaining the history and what happened during this
Mhm.
year. So when we were here in Cartagena, we went on a tour in an area called Old Town a couple of evenings ago. And he was explaining to us about how the Inquisition happened here in Cartagena and
Mhm.
how they would get people to confess. And we went in this museum and he's showing us like the guillotines and the this and all these torturous things but it was just interesting. And he had, it happened on this timeline and this is when it stopped here and all of that. So I enjoy tours. And then the other thing is just like you both just said, just to do nothing.
Mhm.
People are like, "Oh, where you gonna go today?" I'm like, "Nowhere." They're like, "Where you gonna go?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm good. I'm gonna just sit here and do nothing."
Mhm.
And so that seems to be, I think, a theme between the three of us on vacation. So Regina says she enjoys tasting foods from other cultures and definitely highly communicating with other cultures when she's on vacation. Awesome, Regina. That sounds good. The foods, I must say, here have been amazing, and I think I've partaken too much, so I should probably stop that. Um, Dr. Hamdi says he enjoys going to different places and enrich your eyes with the beauty of nature. That sounds amazing and something very fun. If you are in a place that's lovely and scenic, very fun things to do on vacation. So thanks everyone for participating. If you join later, you're watching the replay, you're listening to the audio podcast. Don't forget, you can always type your comment and share your top two with us. So let's get back to our strategies. How do you create a anti-work trend resistant culture? What can we be doing, Mireille, in order to keep this type of behavior and influence from impacting our workplaces?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, obviously, when there's such an environment, it's about trust. So you need to restore the trust. So it means sometime for leaders to be more vulnerable and go toward the people that you lead and make time to talk to them and understand where they are, what they want to do, and maybe create, I don't know, you can create a particular environment or group or whatever the format you want to give it, just to have this setup where they can express themselves and feel like they matter, because I think that's what it's all about. A lot of people don't feel like they matter; they feel like they are just a number and they have to deliver. So that's an important thing to do. And a lot of we've seen a lot of organization, they're all about KPI and all kind of thing. What they can do is actually integrate their team to be part of defining those KPI, because then when you're part of the process, you're more inclined to put the effort and really be very intimate with what's going to come out of it. So really have this inclusion that we're talking about, and value your employee for that.
I love that, Mireille, including them in developing the KPIs. How
Hmm.
many times do we get KPIs and they say to us, "All right, this is the measure. This is what we're going
Hmm.
for," and you're like, "Wait, what? Where did
What?
that
Yeah.
come from? That
Hmm.
doesn't make much sense. How do I
Hmm.
impact that number? I don't have a lot of influence, but yet this is the target." Right, this is
Hmm.
the KPI, so you feel disconnected. That's a really, really great point. I will say, I'm gonna just shout out Dr. Hamdi here for a second, because he is an amazing leader, and his team in Saudi Arabia is he is really leading the initiative to be that inclusive leader who is on the ground, out in front, and listening. So kudos to you, Dr. Hamdi, for your leadership with your team. Brandy, what can we do to continue to build resistant um, cultures to these anti-work trends?
Yeah. So a few things come to mind for me. The first of which is to start by having like setting some realistic expectations from a strategic perspective. So, for example, um, I can't get a package delivered from Amazon overnight anymore. 4 years ago, I could order something at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon and have it by 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. That's not the reality of the situation. McDonald's, a lot of fast food places are closing their lobbies. I can't get dry cleaning on the weekends because what's happened is there are not enough people to support the way business was done before. And those businesses have recognized that and they've changed those expectations, right?
Hmm.
So I think having that honest set of expectations from the strategic perspective, also having an honest dialogue, leaders with their teams.
Hmm.
Mireille talked about this, listening, supporting. I really encourage all leaders, especially right now, because I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that we don't know what we're doing.
Hmm.
So cool. If you're a leader, be a learner. Ask
Hmm.
solicit that feedback from your team. What do you need? What's working? What's not working? What do you suggest? And then I want to add on to what Mireille was talking about with those KPIs. So we have a client who their leaders, starting from that very first level of management all the way up, one of their KPIs is engagement and retention. So they're being held accountable for that. So when
Hmm.
their numbers aren't looking good, the conversation then happens with the leader and their leader instead of like, oh, it's the employee's fault. And
Hmm.
so it's a really powerful tool.
Mm, such great tips. I think I'm going to have to summarize, do a short, maybe reduced video on the tips that you and Mireille are giving, that things that companies can do to reduce the impact of these trends. Dr. Hamdi also adds, listen to your employees the same way that you're listening to your customers. They are equally important. This is a
Hmm.
long time conversation, right? Who's most important, the customer or the employee? Well, if we don't have customers, then we don't have money. Yeah, well, you don't have money if you don't have employees either. So,
Hmm.
Right.
I think again, they are equally important. And then he also said, thanks for your kind words. Absolutely, I firmly believe that and have seen that with you. And it's a model. It's things that you can do, things that organizations can do. I want to bring something else into the equation. In our Leadership Above the Grind Mentoring and Coaching Academy, one of the modules is about feedback. And we
Mhm.
did an entire lesson on feedback because leaders need to understand what feedback is. Feedback is not just when you're asking questions on a survey, right? Feedback is 360 degrees all around you at all times. If you
Mhm.
walk up the hall, the way people respond to you, it's feedback. If people are not bringing you their problems because they're afraid, that's feedback.
Yeah.
If your teams are not communicating and collaborating well, that's feedback, right? Feedback is all around you. So, as a leader, I think one of the things that organizations can do to be more resistant to anti work trends is fine tune their feedback receivers, right? Be
Mhm.
aware because guess what? People don't always speak what they're feeling,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but they will show it somehow.
Yeah.
They will either quiet quit, they will either be disengaged, they will either shut down, they will either, start stirring the pot. There are different ways that they will express themselves. And as a leader, you need to be very, very in tune with that. I was at an organization one time not too long ago, and I was talking to a leader, and we had been working all day, and it was late, and we had dinner, and it was late at night, and they said, "All right, I need to head back to work." And I said, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Okay, we've been working all day. We're just finishing dinner, and where are you going?" I always
Mhm.
sort of challenge leaders on their self care. So if anybody brings me in, just be forewarned, I will be talking to your leaders about taking care of themselves because that is how you get the best out of them, right? So I said, why are you going back to work? Are you on the project? No, but I need to make sure that I'm showing that I'm going, above and beyond. Is what they said to me. I was like, oh dear. I was like, I was like, oh dear.
That's crazy.
I said, did someone say that to you? Is that like an explicit expectation or is this you just assuming? And they're like, no, but I think that that's the expectation. I'm like, huh. So just know that even if you don't say certain things, people infer things. If you
Mhm.
send emails all weekend long, people believe that you expect for them to send emails all weekend long. So I talked to
Mhm.
one leader. Here's another brief story. I was at a workshop and I had a group of leaders around the table and their CEO was there. And I said, okay, how many of you are sending emails on the weekends? And the CEO looked at me and was thinking, did I bring you in for this? I was just curious. And they were like, so a lot of hands went up. And the CEO said, well, I send emails on the weekends, but it's not for people to jump and respond to them on the weekends. So I looked at the other end of the table and I said, what do you think when he sends that email on the weekend? And they said, no, I feel like I need to immediately respond. My CEO just sent me an email. And so I
Mhm.
looked at him and he was just looking like, oh,
Mhm.
right. Sometimes we are unintentional and unaware in our actions and we don't
Mhm.
understand the impact of what's happening.
Yeah.
Leaders are doing things like that and it's impacting how people feel. They
Mhm.
feel like they are pressured to work on the weekends and do all of these things. And then you get someone that says, you know what, I'm not going above and beyond anymore. I'm quote quiet quitting, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to do my work and that's all I'm doing. So Doug says, it's a great thing when the execs understand this simple thing. When we do well, we do well. I love
Mhm.
that, Doug, and it's
Mhm.
such an important point. It seems so simple, but
Mhm.
apparently it's not that simple, right? So, what are some other things that we can do? So let me shift this a bit because we've been talking about what organizations can do.
Mhm.
Brandy, how do we help leaders become more aware about their own leadership impact? Because I think many times they are not aware.
Yeah, so I think there's a few pieces here. I think that measurement piece and that accountability piece is something that needs to be part of how their performance is measured. I also think that we need to give leaders the tools and the strategies to lead effectively in this new environment, right? So, Rhonda, you were just talking about sending emails on the weekends and working late. Hours put in, those are inputs, those are not outputs.
Right.
So we're spending a lot of time talking with people about, okay, let's look at what those outputs are. Let's look at what those results are. because that's really what's important, right?
Mhm.
And it's different. The way that leaders used to lead was by walking around, checking stuff out. I can go by Mireille's desk and see that she's got a stack 6 feet tall of paperwork. Maybe she needs help. Maybe I can pop in and support her in some way. We don't get to see that now. And especially with remote and hybrid work, a lot of conversations and communication have become very transactional and sort of maybe focused on the things that are not as important, focused on when did you clock in, how, when did you take your bathroom break, things that in the greater scheme of things don't matter. So I think it's important to measure what we want to see and also give those leaders the tools to be able to do that, because I think to some degree there's a lot of fear, right? Like, so, hey, Brandy, what you're telling me is all of these things I've been doing for the past 10, 15 years are maybe not going to work as well, or maybe not work at all. And oh crap, so what do I do now? So I think it's important to address that piece as well.
And Mireille, speak to that fear. But so let me just say, I gave fair warning at the beginning of the show that I had no idea what was going to be happening around me. Apparently, it's time for the party to start, because I've literally got two different sets of music like starting all around me. I think people are woke now. It's Saturday, and so they're like, "Hey, let the party begin." So just so that you all know, after the show, I will be going to the party. So anyway, Mireille, speak to some of what Brandy is talking about around the fears that we have as leaders, and how that's impacting this.
Yeah, so really building on the fear, it's important that leaders also, have space to be vulnerable, because I think that's the aspect that we sometimes forget, that we as leader also need to learn. We need input, and we don't know everything. So it's important to create an environment where they can be vulnerable, and make sure that their team is okay with that, because otherwise, there's no communication, and the fear really create a barrier between the team and you, because they always think about you as somebody who is thinking something else, or is above them, and they're scared. So it's important that you show that just like them, you have uh, time when you don't know, time when you are not okay, and explain to them, that that's okay. Create this environment where you feel safe, vulnerable, so that they can learn from you to be vulnerable and to express themselves. Otherwise, fear takes over everyone.
Mm-hmm. It does take over, and I see it play out in many different ways. It's actually
Hmm.
very interesting. So with the whole remote work thing, there's a fear that
Hmm.
organizations have that people are not actually working. Well, you don't
Hmm.
really have to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
That's a choice that you're making as a leader, to focus on: are they stealing hours? Are they
Hmm.
producing the outcome?
Hours.
That's
Yeah.
what you need to be worried about,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So are they, what are those targets that we're measuring that show us that each role is doing what you expect for them to do? What are those outputs? And then as a leader, if you've got a good, strong sense of those outputs, then you don't need to worry about if
No.
they took an hour off. Seriously, it's
Hmm.
the whole thing about over controlling your people, right? You don't need to micromanage your people. You don't need to worry about if I took an extra hour for lunch. Like, at the end of the day, Brandy, it's like you said, those are things that don't really matter. What matters
Hmm.
is this person achieving the result, the
What I
business
ask.
result that you
Hmm.
need for them to achieve. So I think this is such an important conversation. I can't believe the show is almost over already. So let's hold up our cups and do
And we're going to party with you, because the music
yes.
Good,
looks.
right?
Got it. All right. So, gosh, this music is just crazy.
Mhm.
Oh, I know this song.
Yeah, that's why I said we're going off to party after that.
The party has started. Oh my goodness, so fun. So, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go into our "What's in Your Cup" segment,
Mm-hmm.
And as we come back, we're going to begin our wrap up discussions. And if you're out there and you're watching, tell us what we put in your cup today. What are you taking away from this conversations? And I think what I want to begin asking is, what will you do differently as a result of this conversation? Because we come here every week on the Coffee with Rhonda show, and it's fun and enjoyable. But at the end of the day, we want to inspire you to create happy, healthy, productive workplaces. You're in your business as an entrepreneur, we want to help support you in developing a really healthy business. And so that's what we want to do. It's one of our goals for being here. So when we come back, we'll begin our wrap up and we'll talk about what we're hoping that you take away from this conversation. All right. So let's go around and begin. Mireille, let's start with you. What have you heard in this conversation, and what are you hoping that people take away from this conversation?
Okay, so there's been a lot, but I think the first thing is really for organization to understand that the way they used to lead is not always, the way that they should go ahead with. So that's the first step, and the second step is to be conscious of including your team in everything that you do, and it comes down to what do you expect and how do they contribute to set that with you. And I think that's those are the key things that I really take from the conversation.
Mireille, I think it's such an important point about including your team.
Hmm.
And you've been saying something the entire show also about vulnerability
Hmm.
and being vulnerable with your team. Listen, being a leader doesn't mean that you have to know it all and make all the
Hmm.
decisions and figure it all by yourself. So that quote that says that it's lonely at the top, I think
Hmm.
I frankly think is BS. I think it's only lonely at the top if you put yourself
If
on
you
an
put it
island,
exactly.
right? If you
Hmm.
believe that you're up there alone and you alone have all the pressure and all this the decision, I think that that's when it gets very lonely. But if you leverage the incredibly smart team that you have, all of a sudden it's not so lonely at the top.
Hmm.
So thank you, Mireille. Brandy, as you share your final thoughts and what you want people to take away from this conversation, also share with us how people can connect with you and learn more about the work that you do in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, if I think it's important for leaders to think about themselves as learners, right? And if you think about yourself as a learner, it feels more comfortable to be vulnerable. It feels more comfortable to include the team and ask those questions and say, you know what, I don't know, I'm learning. Let's learn together. So I
Hmm.
think that's a really important piece. And then also be really realistic about where things are right now and be realistic about expectations, both at the strategic perspective and all the way down to your team members. As far as where to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, Brandy Ferrer. You can also find me at pathfinder-strategies.com. And I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandy. We've got a couple of comments out there, and Regina says, "Great show. Have a wonderful time in Cartagena, Colombia at the party. I wish I was there." Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be a kind of a wild day today. Doug says the consensus that command and control is dead. He said it's true, but teaching a dinosaur to read might prove to be a challenge. Oh, Doug, I know. But you know what? It's why people like you and me and Brandy and Mireille love to do the work that we do, because it
Hmm.
is possible. And
Hmm.
there is nothing greater than when we see an organization and a light bulb goes on. When we see a group of leaders who goes, "Oh my goodness, I get it. I see it
Hmm.
now and I know the roadmap." That is just one of the most special things in the work that I do. Dr. Hamdi says the key message is enhancing a better work culture. Absolutely, because that better work culture is one will help you build that anti-work trend resistant culture. If your culture is strong and aware and inclusive, and your people are not quiet quitting, they're just not,
Hmm.
right? In
Hmm.
fact, You might have a waiting list for people who want to join your organization. They're waiting for some of those other people to move on and get out. And they're like, no, I'm staying right here because this is a great place to work. And Doug says, amen to that. I think for me, my final thought and what I am now calling my last drop is this. Anti-work trends are not random events. They are a response to dissatisfaction that is brewing below the surface and likely has been for some time. Use this feedback. So for organizations that are innovative and on the edge
Mm-hmm.
and really built to lead into the future, then for those organizations, you can use this feedback to transform your company into a top workplace of choice. That is an opportunity for you. I got to say, I'm going to miss my little friend here, the bird guy who has just been singing and chirping the entire show. It's been pretty cool to have him here. I mean, that's the Cartagena experience. So thanks everyone for joining us. Brandy, thank you so much for being here. It's been an amazing conversation. Mireille, thank you as always, my
You're
friend. And
welcome.
for everyone out there, we so appreciate you. Don't forget, share the video. There is somebody out there on your team who needs to hear this. And for Brandy and Mireille, I'll see you all backstage or in our debrief. And for everyone else out there, we look forward to seeing you back here next week on another episode of the Coffee with Rhonda Show. Until next week, everybody.
All right.
Bye bye.